All right, but just 1 second. I'm just going to try to remind everybody one more time. I'll just do this whole 1 second. Okay, copy. Oh, yeah. How's everybody? Everyone ready for this? For the for the hurricane? Is it coming? Anybody know if it's coming? Any opinions on that? Anyone following the news?
In your honor, Rabbi, it's being changed to a tornado.
Tornado. Yeah. Usually when I was in school, the kids used to say Torah, nada.
That's fine.
Okay. At any rate, first of all, Roy Kaplan, Mazel Tov. He's right here.
Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov.
Thank you, thank you.
On his ship that's going. Baruch Hashem. What I can testify. I met the Kala. She's almost as sweet as Ben. She's really a doll. Really very, very special. Okay, so today I'm going to say something very interesting. An interesting thing. I'm recording already, so. Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to mute everyone, and I'm going to share you something interesting. So it goes like this. In the next segment in this what we're learning, so it says an interesting halacha. It says one should avoid calling the youngest in the family the baby. When they are a child, teenager, this can sometimes make them feel humiliated. I don't know how many people on this page were the baby in the family. I was the middle child. Right? I'm not sure what's worse, being called the baby or the middle child. Like, you know, the baby, at least you're the baby. Middle child, you're a zero. Like, you know, you don't exist. Like, you know, someone got lost in a totem pole. But so it's interesting, and that's a common thing. Oh, this is my baby, and he says here that, you know, people are sensitive. So he brings a remarkable story here. I'm going to bring you 2 stories. That's what I'm going to share with you today. Just 2 remarkable stories. And he goes like this. He says, he brings a story. I've heard this story before. It's in the book on Rabbi Yaakov. And it goes like this. During one of their regular Wednesday learning sessions, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky mentioned to his son, Rabbi Avram, he was an older man, that a father and a daughter would be coming for a brief visit, and he wanted Rabbi Avram to remain in the room. That request was quite out of the ordinary, as Rabbi Avram usually stepped out of the room when visitors came, in order to allow them to talk in privacy. When the visitors arrived, the first few minutes of the conversation were taken up with small talk about the father's business and the daughter's schoolwork. In the course of the conversation, Rabbi Yaakov clapped his son affectionately on the back and said, "This is my baby, Avram." I mean, he was an older man. He was an adult. He probably had children or grandchildren already. A short time later, the father and daughter departed. Since Rabbi Avram was then a man in his late 40s, he was eager for some explanation of his father's unexpected reference to him as my baby. At their next Wednesday learning session, Rabbi Yaakov explained what had taken place. The father had always had a warm relationship with his daughter, his youngest child, until he made the fatal error of introducing her as his baby. The daughter felt humiliated and virtually stopped speaking to her father. Distraught, the father had consulted Rabbi Yaakov, who told him to bring his daughter on Wednesday when Rabbi Avram would be in Monsey. Shortly after the meeting with Rabbi Yaakov, the greatly relieved father called to say that as a result of the visit, his relationship with his daughter had never been better. That's an amazing story, beautiful. That's, you know, that's a real Gadol story. I mean, you know, I'm sure Rabbi Yaakov had many Gedolim stories, Ruach HaKodesh and knowing Kol HaTorah and all that. But this is the type of Gadol story we can all relate to. So that's story number 1. Then I want to share with you a story that I mentioned years ago, and I had actually written it up. So I'm going to read you a story, and here it's a little more powerful. It's not so much calling my baby in a loving sense. It's actually sometimes we castigate our children, and we say things that are so hurtful that it can last a lifetime. It can be detrimental for a lifetime. There's a story I read about someone who was involved with at-risk kids, as yeshiva at-risk kids, and he told over the following story. He says, at a yeshiva for disillusioned adolescents in Israel, they recently celebrated the Yontif of Shavuos, not that long, with special programming and inspiring speakers throughout the night, delicious food, inspiring singing, and a kumzitz. Even the most hardened hearts among them experienced the joy of Torah and Yiddishkeit. Yet there was one student missing. The Rosh Yeshiva searched through the campus to find him. He finally discovered him in the stable of horses they maintained as a healthy distraction for the students, sitting all by himself. Surprised to see the Rosh Yeshiva roaming the campus, the young man cynically blurted out, "Don't you belong in the study hall, Rabbi?" After responding that he was out looking for him, he then inquired of his charge as to why he was there. The youth told him that he was in good company, as both he and the fellow horses both couldn't fathom why anyone would have to stay up learning all night and be deprived of sleep. After all, he pondered, why should we have to stay up to atone for our ancestors having slept at the giving of the Torah? The Rosh Yeshiva lovingly told him, he says, look, that he's welcome to go to sleep, and there was no expectation or disappointment, and he was free to choose as he pleased. With incredulous look, so the Rabbi said, go to sleep, it's fine. This is funny. So the kid responded, the teenager said, with an incredulous look on his face, he exclaimed, "What do you think? I'm a little kid? No one sleeps on Shavuos night." That was the kid's response. Strange. Here he's talking about, we don't have to stay up all night. He said, oh, I've been a klein kind. You say, I need a yelet katan. He said, I need a yelet katan. That's what he said. So the perplexed look on the face of the Rosh Yeshiva in reaction to his angry response, so he saw that the Rosh Yeshiva, when he said this, was sort of like, what's going on? I mean, here he's telling me not to stay up, and then he says, what, I'm a yelet katan? So he himself, the kid himself, realized what was going on in his mind, and he shared, and sort of it was an opening. It opened up his heart that he hadn't opened up all this time, and he shared with the Rabbi, the Rosh Yeshiva, the following thing. He says, years ago, as a young boy, he would accompany his father each Shavuos night to his local shul. Restless as he was, he would learn as long as he could, but would inevitably end up gallivanting outside all night with his friends, having the time of their lives, like so many of us remember. An elderly neighbor whose sleep was disturbed by these well-intentioned, albeit playful boys, stormed into the shul, confronting his father as to the propriety of bringing children to frolic, all Shavuos night, and disturbing the innocent neighbors. The irate father, who was deeply engaged with his chavrusa, turned to his son and exclaimed out loud, he says, "Kanireh shata od yeled katan lech lishon." You are obviously still a little baby, a little child. Why don't you just go to sleep? So this deeply traumatized young man, from that painful moment and on, subconsciously dedicated his life to prove shehu lo yeled katan, and would defiantly choose to do as he pleased in order to prove his father wrong. Not about gallivanting at night, but not keeping mitzvahs and going off the derech. That's a story. It's a painful story, but it just shows you that sometimes even the parents, sometimes it's the parents who say things, and sometimes, some of us are a little on the other scale of the spectrum. We're not raising kids anymore. We're trying to undo the damage that we did, chas v'shalom. But, we sometimes, we look back and we things that we say, and I mentioned earlier, and I know it's Dvar, I'm labeling someone and saying that, tayelet katan, that's like, the child felt diminished, he felt incapable, had no self-confidence. Parents, I have to be so careful never to say, you can't, they want to help out sometimes, and then they're discouraged, you're too young, you don't know, you can't do anything. And kids are so sensitive, and that's why Noah's Dvarim, the pain. And that's why Noah's Dvarim is so painful. So obviously it depends on, who says it, but no one's allowed to pain anyone with words. But this is, that's a really powerful story that really stuck with me over the years, and I've kept that with me. And so never call anyone. I mean, obviously, I think some of us might be happy. I would love when my mother would call me the middle child or the baby, my little Heshi. I mean, I would love that. But it all depends in the context, and everyone is a little different. But that's something that everyone should be sensitive to. I thought it was an important thing that I think many of us can relate to, especially having been involved in whether chinuch or our own children. And okay, I'll just go a little further. We have a few more minutes, so we'll go forward. Occupy the time. So it says, goes forward a bunch of other halachas here. And again, remember, this was a pamphlet written for kids at camp. It says, one has to be careful when learning with Charusa not to make any derogatory comments about what he says. For example, that pshat makes no sense. No shaykhis. What are you talking about? Turn on your brain. Even though you find the Gemara says sometimes one of the Tanaim, or Meraim, I forgot what it was, they did sometimes and you're not sure. So I mean, I'm not sure. There's this. It doesn't bring makayos to everything, but the Ma'aseh the Gemara says that sometimes they were in such a vehement machlokes and wanted to. The Tana, or the other rabbi disagreed. And he said, "You have no mayach in your head." So I guess you have to take into context. You have to know who you're talking to. Sometimes that's just the way good friends sometimes taunt each other, but you never know. Some people are sensitive. Some people are sensitive. Maybe some people, are sensitive about their level of intelligence and that others are smarter than them. If your friend says a pshat that makes no sense and you realize it, don't point out how the pshat makes no sense. Instead, just continue on to the next topic or the true pshat. The best thing to do when your friend tells you a pshat, which makes no sense, to tell him, I hear, let me think about it. A few minutes later, go over to him and tell him, I thought about it and I have the following question. Your charusa tries to asking you a question or tell you a pshat in something. Stopping in the middle and saying, I know what you're trying to ask. Say, so it can be honest for him. Very often our friend says a pshat in the Gemara and immediately we start attacking it, trying to show how it makes no sense. We tell him it makes no sense. Then as you continue talking and thinking about it, you start realizing that it is the right pshat. It actually does make sense. Sometimes we make fun of a question, then we find a Rishon and Achron that asks that question. Then we feel so dumb. It is hard to be minded to the truth once we already put ourselves in that position. Thinking about the embarrassment you go through can help you prevent saying derogatory comments about someone else's comment. Pshat. He says, your friend asks you a dumb question. Don't make him fun of him. Just help him out by answering the question. Your friend says, what is the bracha on soda? Don't say, you don't know what bracha make on soda. Everyone knows that, even a 3-year-old. The same is true when a classmate asks you to help with his homework or asks you for the translation of a word. Be careful not to make fun of him. Don't even say it's easy. This is what it means, unless you can do so without embarrassing him. And finally, sometimes we jump to conclusions that thinking the person asked a dumb question. But if we would have listened carefully to every word, we would then realize it was a good question. And that's true by many things. Sometimes we are asked a question in halacha and we laugh at it, thinking it's a pshat, it's a pashut, not a problem. But if we ask a rav, we will be surprised. It's a real question. Very often, never. No, I always tell people, there's no such thing as a dumb question. I'll tell you a great story he has here. One more story. He says, one sukkah, a yid rushed in, frantic with worry, to Rav Shmuel Vosner. He was a great rav from Europe. He had his Talmud Chacham in Lublin. He's a rav in Bnei Brak. He said his question about his Kuchen Nefesh. His 2-year-old daughter had touched an Atrisk before washing Negavasa. Was the Atrisk still kosher for bracha? Anyone who heard the question had to bite their lips to keep from laughing out loud. But Rav Vosner didn't even show a trace of a smile. He went to the bookcase, took out some svarim, and perused them intently for a few minutes. Only then did he answer the Atrisk was kosher chatchila. In answer to the amazed looks around him, he explained he learned this from his Rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Elimelech Kahana, the Ab Bezin of Ungvar. Amazing story. One sukkah, a man rushed into the Rav of Ungvar and cried, what should I do? The goat ate my lulav. The people standing there nearly burst out laughing, but the Ab Bezin's expression was very serious. He turned to the man in question, was the sharp point of the lulav facing the goat's mouth or the other way when it ate the lulav? It was facing outward when the goat swallowed it, the man answered. A sigh of relief escaped the Ab Bezin's mouth. If so, the goat is kosher, he pronounced. Only then did the others in the room understand the question. Here's an example. You make an assumption, you think it's a joke. He said the question was not about the lulav, it was about the goat. The man was asking if the goat was kosher or not, if the point of his lulav had punctured its internal organs. And although they were embarrassed by their previous mockery, they had learned an important lesson. Never, ever to laugh at any person's seemingly silly or funny question. You never know. And even if it really is an absurd question, Rav Vosner would emphasize, there's no reason to ridicule anyone. Otherwise, people will be afraid to ask important questions in the future. Okay, folks? Never, no such thing as a dumb question. Never. Okay. And it's a wonderful audience. Thank you once again for coming. I'm rushing out to